Hi, this is Sonalika, and I'll be telling you a story today from the latest novel of Ravinder Singh, You Are All I Need. And the story is titled as A Cocoon of Love by Ruby Gupta. Mala stretched languorously on the disheveled bed and grinned joyously. She had not felt this good in years. A long forgotten feeling of exhilaration coursed through her veins. Impulsively, she jumped out of bed and did a jig, laughing out loud. Whirling around, Mala suddenly caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. She moved closer and inspected herself. The animated eyes, full pink lips, flushed cheeks, and daringly tangled tresses, glowing complexion, all seemed to belong to some attractive stranger. Her luminous eyes seemed to contain within them some mysterious, delightful secret. An impish smile of exultation further intensified the beauty of her countenance. She leaned forward and kissed the charming woman in the mirror. Involuntarily, her mind went back to her wedding night, almost a decade ago. Mala was a beautiful coy bride eagerly awaiting her new yet unfamiliar husband. The mandatory wedding night of the countless Hindi movies that she had watched flashed through her mind. She smiled to herself in anticipation. Of course, her husband was a far cry from the fair, well fed Hindi film hero. A man is judged by his position and not by his looks, her mother had admonished her when she had raised the subject after her marriage had been arranged. A plain man will love you all the more for your beauty. Her mother had consoled her, softening a little. And so now she waited, expecting her husband to lovingly and tenderly initiate her into the joys of marital life. Just then, her husband Shankar entered and immediately locked the door, shutting out his numerous relatives who thronged outside, choking among themselves. Mala shrank within herself. Shankar moved up to her and lifted her chin. You are so beautiful, he said, smiling gloatingly. I'm going to really enjoy being married to you. Mala gazed at him with a smile. I have hated my color for as long as I can remember, but I couldn't do anything about it. So I did the next best thing. I got a milky white bride for myself. Shankar grinned triumphantly. Her mother was right, Mala thought to herself. He will really truly love me for the rest of my life. What more can a woman ask for? So what if he was too tall, too thin, and too dark? After all, he was a civil servant, and to top it, was madly in love with her. Let me see what you look like. Shankar reached for her sari. Alarmed, Mala jerked back. Your innocence is really exciting. He moved closer, oblivious to her trapped expression. His fingers were upon her sari now. She stared in horrified fascination at the long, large, jointed, bony fingers against the crimson silk. Remember, your married life will be hell if you displease your husband on your wedding night. Her mother's words rang instantly in her mind. Shankar was sitting so close to her that she could feel his breath on her skin. A shudder went through her as the image of a fiery spider crawling up her untouched body darted through her mind. Beautiful, really beautiful, murmured Shankar gleefully, as he seemed to drink in her beauty with his lustful eyes. Much later, as Mala stared at the long snake-like back of her sleeping husband, she was unable to come to terms with what had happened. She had expected Shankar to go into raptures of her beauty, proclaim his undying devotion to her, maybe even say a poem in praise of her. Instead, he had simply violated her. It seemed like a nightmare, but the sharing pain was real. Numbly, she looked at the whirring fan overhead, waiting for the agony to subside. After a while, Mala dragged herself out of bed and stumbled into the bathroom. She bathed vigorously, trying to wash away all of traces of her husband. Later, restlessly tossing and turning, she tried to sleep, but her mind was too agitated. Thoughts of running away plagued her. Had she married an animal? How could Shankar have been so insensitive, so selfish, so callous? Mala had never been treated so badly in her entire life. The fact that Shankar had utilized her for his gratification in such a coarse, barbarous manner distressed her. Gradually exercising all her willpower, she calmed down, consoling herself that in time it would be better. She fell asleep, but it was not to be. In the early hours of the morning, rude hands woke her up abruptly, and once again she submitted silently to the torture her husband meted out her. When after several weeks of daily torment, Mala protested, Shankar countered pompously, any other woman would be pleased to get so much attention from me, but you, if it weren't for your beauty, I would never have come near a cold woman like you. Mala began hating her looks. She wished fervently that she would turn into an ugly hag. Then perhaps she would be spared this daily humiliation by her husband. One day, when her mother persistently questioned Mala about her constantly sad expression, she broke down and related everything. But my dear, this is the fate of every woman. I had thought that by now you would have learned to accept it, her mother counseled. But Ma, I hate it and I hate him. How can he be so insensitive to my feelings? Stop pitying yourself. You are not the only woman in such a position. It's a wife's duty. Be thankful that he is not straight up, but has provided you with everything any woman can ask for. Look at your status as an IS officer's wife. Her mother's tone hardened. Oh, Ma, you don't know what it's like, Mala wailed piteously. Cutting in, her mother retorted, I know what it's like. Do you think your father and I live as a brother and sister? Ma? Mala was shocked. But Papa is such a tender, loving man, she protested. Isn't Shankar extremely gentle with his nieces and nephews? Her mother countered. At this, Mala was left speechless, trying to come to terms with her mother's words. After a while, she said, But Papa, I don't believe it. Believe me, all men are the same, her mother said bitterly with pursed lips. So it was, day after day and year after year. It was just as T.S. Eliot had said not so long ago. The meal is ended, she is bored and tired, endeavors to engage her in caresses which still are unreproved if undesired. Flushed and decided, he assaults at once, exploring hands encounter no defense. His vanity requires no response and makes a welcome of indifference. Over the years, Mala endeavored repeatedly to establish a semblance of some kind of friendship with Shankar, but all her efforts came to naught. Shankar was simply not interested in her as a separate human being. For him, she seemed to exist only in her capacity as a beautiful wife to display and for his own pleasure. She was supposed to be a useful extension to himself. Her role was to smoothly run his home and be an exemplary hostess to his relatives, friends, colleagues, and acquaintances, and of course, cater to his needs in the bedroom. Apart from that, there was nothing that Shankar wanted to do with her. Shankar never talked to her, really talked to her, about anything. There was no friendship, no companionship. All their conversations were perfunctory, related to whatever he needed her to do for him. There was only the mundane that they ever talked about. There was nothing of the profound or the sublime or the intellectual in their talks ever. There was no fun filled repartee or light hearted banter either. After years of futile attempts, entreaties, tears, cajoling, and begging, Mala gave up, trying to establish a deeper connection with her husband. She withdrew further into a shell. She began existing at a superficial level, while the real Mala disappeared, bit by bit, and then completely. With the passage of time and the birth of two children, Mala indeed lost all her charm and vitality. She always looked pale, depressed, and her mouth perpetually dropped. Yet her sharp features and fair color remained, and Shankar still did not stray. Then Ketaki entered her life. The smart, savvy, unflappably cool Ketaki ran her own garment export unit. They hit it off at their very first meeting, and in an incredibly short time became very close friends. Ketaki was everything that Mala had ever wanted to be. Ketaki, on the other hand, was drawn to the vulnerable softness that enveloped Mala like a mist. Somehow it seemed but natural that they exchanged their innermost secrets. Ketaki had never married, being put off men after seeing her hard-working mother abused every day by her unemployed alcoholic, brutish father. She was further alienated from the male species when a cousin, whom she had looked up to, molested her. Ketaki had vowed that she would never allow any man to gain control over her in any way, least of all her heart. Mala could not help but admire the manner in which Ketaki had taken charge of her life. By now, they had started meeting every day for lunch. At times they giggled like schoolgirls, and at others exchanged their pain and anguish. At last, Mala had found someone who understood and empathized with her. They shared the same interest and had a similar outlook towards life. Slowly, Mala became infected with Kitaki's verve and energy. She seemed to flower for the first time in her life, while Kitaki lost some of her tough businesswomen facade and smiled more often. Kitaki urged Mala to get back her individuality, her identity. Mala did not even know what that was. Think back. What did you love doing most in school? In college? There must have been something, Kitaki coaxed fervently. Er, it, it was oil painting, Mala spoke diffidently. Well, there you have it. You are going to become a painter. Brushing aside all of Mala's protestations, Ketaki hauled her to the market and bought her easels, paints, brushes, and all the things needed for painting. But what will Shankar say? Will he allow it? Mala was apprehensive. Nonsense. You just need to be smart about it. You have to present this to Shankar as another feather in your cap. Meaning? Mala was confused. Meaning, Shankar would be all too glad to show off to the world that his trophy wife is not only gorgeous, but an artist too. Do you think it will work? Mala was hesitant. Of course, I know exactly how men like Shankar think. Just do as I say. Ketaki was confident. Mala nodded. Her being began to fill with a long forgotten excitement at the thought of using the paintbrush after years. Now, the first thing you do is convert one of the guest rooms of your sprawling bungalow into a studio. After that, all you have to do is paint. Paint like never before. Pour all your angst, all your emotions, everything into your paintings. Ketaki spoke passionately. Mala looked at Ketaki in wonder. Was she a goddess? The thought came to her, and tears almost welled up in her eyes. A month later, Mala invited Ketaki to her studio when no one was at home. Ketaki went from painting to painting, exclaiming in delight, "This is better than I expected." Really? You really think so? Mala's art teachers in school and college had always loved her paintings, but that had been so long ago. Yes, Ketaki was firm. Now I want you to make about 30 more, in addition to these 6, and then we'll exhibit them in one of the art galleries. Mala was speechless. For the first time in her life, she began to dream. To Mala, Ketaki was everything she never had. She was her mentor, her best friend, her brother, sister, girlfriend, boyfriend, buddy, doting mother, indulgent father, partner in crime, confidante, everything. Bit by bit, Ketaki began filling the painful void. The humongous aching crater within her that had swallowed up the real Mala eons ago. They felt like long lost soulmates united at last. One afternoon, while sharing their daily lunch, Ketaki said, "I don't feel like going back to my office. Let's go back to my apartment for a nice siesta." Okay, Mala was all too ready. In any case, her children returned at 6 after attending school and subsequent tuition classes, and Shankar returned only by 9 or much later. Later, lying in Ketaki's ecstatically designed bedroom and holding hands, they felt at peace. "This is the first time I have taken time off since I started working." Ketaki broke the companionable silence. "And I feel free for the first time in years." Mala smiled. "I love your hair." Ketaki softly caressed Mala's silky locks. That feels so good." Mala purred languidly as a heavy lassitude overcame her limbs. Her eyes grew heavy and a contented smile curved her mouth. It seemed the most natural thing in the world to pull Ketaki into her arms. Ketaki's arms embraced her tenderly. Mala experienced gentle vibes enveloping her. From somewhere deep within her, copious tears started flowing down her cheeks, and heavy sobs racked her as years of anger, sorrow, and frustration rolled out of her. The calm that followed left her with only one deep feeling of being loved and cared for as never before. Holding Ketaki close, she whispered, "I love you. I love you. I love you." "I know. I love you too," cooed Ketaki. The hours passed in sheer bliss. At last, Mala understood the ramifications of her own being. Finally, she had become true to herself. She was complete now. In the 10 years of marriage, Mala had never formed any kind of attachment with Shankar, whereas here, within a few hours, a lifelong, irrevocable bond had been formed. Ketaki emerged from the kitchen with two steaming cups of tea, and Mala was brought back from her ruminations. They smiled at each other mischievously, sipping their tea in silence. Words were unnecessary, for they knew that each belonged to the other in an immutable union. Till now, their lives had been like a past desert, but at last they had been blessed with the nourishing rain of love and life. This was their own cocoon of love, which no one in the world could breach. And as evening fell, they left the apartment, hand in hand, towards their separate destinations, with joy in their hearts and a spring in their step.